Welcome to BSW's Tech Dive. Tech Dive.
Submerge the ship.
The show goes technically deep into products you care about. The new, the old, the newish. So put on your gear, close up the hatch, and prepare to
Dive. Submerge the ship.
And now, here's John.
Welcome to this edition of BSW Tech Dive. I am John Lynch, Director of Business Development here at Broadcast Supply Worldwide, BSWUSA.com. Today, the topic is AOIP, audio transmission, using a product called Gateway. And we've got the person to explain it all for us right here. His name is Jacob Daniluk. Jacob is with Tieline, and we're talking about the Gateway, which I'm glad you didn't call it buzz here, Jacob, because Gateway has created a buzz in the industry, but we don't want them thinking that's what the audio is going to sound like. So, and what Gateway is doing is really changing how we're distributing audio. But let's go back to the beginning, Jacob, because this is just the latest iteration from Tieline, preceded by Merlin, preceded by Genie, preceded by Commander, and we got now to the Gateway program.
Correct. Yeah, you are absolutely correct. We've, for the past 20-some years, we've been building audio codecs, starting with the Commander codec, two-channel mono codec. So two monos or a stereo. Then we've went into the Bridget, single stereo or single mono codec, more entry level. Then for those who had them, you might be familiar with like the Merlins and the Genies. Those were the first high density audio codecs from Tieline, doing more than two concurrent connections at once.
Now that's the question I want to bring up first, because you referred to it as high density. Is that what you're meaning when you say high density? It's doing more than one signal at a time?
Correct. Yes, we're doing more than one simultaneous stream in mono or in stereo. So like as the Gateway, we have three different models of the Gateway. The Gateway platform as a whole supports up to 16 mono encoders and decoders. So that's 16 streams concurrently. But then we also have two other gateways that are more entry-level gateways. This is because not everybody needs 16 streams. So we have a Gateway 4 that can do 4 mono streams or 2 stereo streams. We have a Gateway 8 that can do 8 monos or 4 stereos. And then we have the Gateway 16 that can do 16 monos or 8 stereos, and any combination of those monos and stereos together at once.
And what we're talking about too is that this is not just a point-to-point kind of a thing, which we were used to back in the early days of codecs. You're actually taking multiple different signals in one box and sending them to multiple places or receiving them from multiple places.
Correct, yeah. The Gateway is designed to have a single internet connection. At the minimum, we can have multiple internet connections. And then from there, through the world of IP and IP routing, we're able to have multiple streams inbound and outbound concurrently. So it's not, as you said, point-to-point anymore, or peer-to-peer in the world of IP. It's peer-to-multi-point, or point-to-multi-point connectivity. So similar to syndication, difference here is we're not sending the same audio. We're sending discrete, unique audio for every single stream at once.
For example, you could have a studio complex. Let's say there's 3 different radio stations operating out of one facility, and they all have different transmitter sites. You could have one Gateway sending the full stereo of 3 different stations to 3 different transmitters.
Correct, yeah. And not only could you have those 3 stereo feeds going to 3 stereo transmitters, you can also have them being repeated through our syndication means to go to your translators, transmitters, your translators, and your repeaters. Or while you're streaming to your transmitter sites in stereo, you can use the remaining leftover channels because 3 stereos is 6 monos in equivalency. So we have 2 monos left over on a Gateway 8. You could use those additional 2 monos for outside broadcasting events like sporting events, car dealership remotes, or just studio to studio affiliate connections if need be.
Well, there's also something else that they could be connecting with, your Report It Live app.
Correct. Yes, and that's probably one of our most popular codecs on the market today, next to the VIA, and also as you pointed out, the Gateway is creating a lot of buzz in the market, and it's also becoming very popular. And with Report It married with the Gateway platform, you can have up to 16 Report It guests all logged in at once, all communicating bidirectionally with one another, and each stream can be truly discrete from their neighboring streams. So stream 1 is isolated from stream 2 and so on, all the way up to 16. Or if you wanted to get a little bit more complex and you had reasons to do it, you could actually take the stream 1 feed and bleed it over to stream 2. So that way stream 1 and 2 can hear one another. So you can do a large conference call, if you will, with audio codecs from 2 remote locations now.
One thing that just woke me up entirely, because I'm in this chair. I work in developing business for BSW and working with different clients and I've got a basic working knowledge somewhat of what the gear will do. And of course, I spent 20 years in radio, as I always say, back in another century. But recently, you and I were involved, along with a couple of other manufacturers, in a major studio installation. Yeah. And on that facility, they were doing sports. It's a sports network. And I got a chance to sit in with them on a football Saturday just to see what they were doing. And I said, wow, compared to how it used to be, because there was a time when I did some locker room shows and some engineering for visiting radio, in addition to decades of play-by-play. But we had all this gear we had to do, and especially the locker room show. It was a short program, but you had this. Well, first off, you got this gear, you put up into this dry pair, you send it up to the booth, and then you got to bring the coach over, and then you hope that it's the right time when the coach gets there. You don't want to hang on to him for too long, waiting for the commercial breaks to end and all that stuff. And I'm over there at that network, and they're not doing any of that. They don't have any of that gear in the locker room. They've got their talent with Report It, sending it right when the coach is available or the player is available, and it gets into the Gateway, and then they put it out of the Gateway on the air when they need it. So it's in format. It sounds just like it's live, and yet you're not inconveniencing the coach, inconveniencing the players, or anything else like that. I was just flabbergasted by what can happen now as opposed to what used to happen back in my day.
Oh, yeah. And to be honest, this past year, that was probably still to this day my favorite install that I've done. Getting to go out there, spend time with that client, helping set up the equipment, and also seeing how it was being used. One of the things that I was really happy to see is that they were wanting to even take their remotes to the next level of not just doing a single point-to-point connection over a single IP. They wanted to use multiple ISPs with our Smart Stream Plus technology to have a redundant stream sent back to the studio. But they also opted for a failover style connection. So the idea here is if the VIA, their field unit, is acting perfectly, internet's solid, everything's solid, but the studio all of a sudden takes a hit on that studio codec. They actually programmed their Tieline network to automatically fail over from one gateway to another. And then inside Wheatstone, they can automatically switch between those 2 channels. So the station operator doesn't even know that the main studio codec has failed and that the secondary studio has picked up. It's a seamless failover. And the reason behind this was to have just every avenue of failure explored and protected. And so that way, if something does happen, they're ready and the codecs automatically respond to it. And that's the power of the Gateway, is that you can have all of this failover built right into one platform, whether it's internet redundancy, power redundancy, or even AOIP redundancy for AES67, WheatNet IP, and the others that we support too.
That was a key point, because it does involve those different platforms you can utilize. But today, it's fixing itself. My day, you're trying to get a hold of the engineer to see if they can fix it, if you can get them on the phone. So, this is and today's world of broadcast and sports, especially at the major levels, there's a lot of money involved. You have a small issue, it's a big cost against the network or the station or whatever. This is put another way, an insurance policy.
Exactly. And even some of the major teams out there that use our ecosystem to do their sporting events, they're starting to rely more and more on our technologies and our techniques instead of trying to set up a very complex MPLS circuit with a high-end internet with maybe prioritization and quality of service enabled on these networks. That's great and all, but there are also dilemmas and problems that can arise inside building one of those networks. Where here with Tieline, we've decided to take that same idea of packet replication, doing it on the application itself, in this case the Tieline product, and now we have a much better idea of how air recovery needs to happen across all the different streams. So that way we can have a seamless failover between one internet to another, and we're starting to see this even in the major leagues area where they might set up this huge MPLS circuit, but at the end of the day they're realizing just simple is better, and having it all in one ecosystem is much better and much more preferred.
Now, let's say we start off at one level of gateway, but we need to go larger. Can we?
In some instances, yes. So as I mentioned, we have three models of the gateway. We have the Gateway 4, the Gateway 8, and the Gateway 16. Now, the Gateway 4, as you'll see in some footage, that the Gateway 4 is a hardware-locked codec. It has 2 stereo inputs, 2 stereo outputs, and that's it. So think of the Gateway 4 more for like remote broadcasting vans for permanent installations in mobile studios or at transmitter sites, or those smaller market stations, where the Gateway 8 and the Gateway 16 share identical hardware, which you'll see here too. In fact, actually, it's this guy over here that I have racked. The Gateway 8 and the 16, as they share the same chassis, that means the Gateway 8 is ready to be scaled up at a moment's notice by just calling our friends at BSW and saying, hello, I need to take my Gateway 8 and I need an extra stereo license. How do I do this? Well, you place the order with BSW, and the idea is same day you'll receive a license key from Tieline to upgrade your Gateway 8 to what I like to call personally a Gateway 10, we'll say. So we go from 4 stereo licenses or 8 monos up to 5 stereo or 10 monos. And we can do that all the way up to 16 channels in total with the Gateway 8.
You can do a 10, you can do a 12, you can do a 14, or get a 16.
Exactly, and you can do that after the fact, and it's almost a same day upgrade. So you don't have to worry about hardware being received and then set up and hiring an engineer to come and do that. If you get a Gateway 8 immediately, I've recommended to our customers just take that and set it up for all 16 monos or all 16 channels. Even though you only have 8 unlocked, go ahead and set up the others if you can. Then that way when you're ready to upgrade it, you don't have to rewire studios.
We talk about the Wheatstone WheatNet. This will handle analog audio too.
Exactly, yeah. The Gateway is not just designed to handle AOIP networks, and that's what we're seeing a lot of people do, is that they're neglecting the world of analog audio or AES-3 audio even. They're moving everybody to AES-67, which that is a great protocol, and it has its place in broadcasting, and it has a very promising future in this industry. But not everybody's ready to make that move. We've dealt with hundreds, if not thousands, of customers throughout the world who are still running analog consoles from 20, 30, 40 years ago. I was talking to a guy the other day. His station doesn't have that first XLR connector in it. He's running all unbalanced RCA connections. It's a small station, small market. So not everybody's making that leap yet. And we see that, and we don't want to leave or make anybody feel like they can't get a high-end, good-sounding audio codec because they don't have AES-67. So we've implemented both routes through Studio Hub connectivity. So we have Studio Hub analog and Studio Hub AES-3 connectors on the back of the Gateway. And then with AOIP, For those stations who are ready for that switch to all AOIP, AES 67 is native for 8 stereo or all 16 mono. And we also have given the ability for Wheatstone users to actually have a WheatNet IP card built into the gateway to make the gateway compliant with the Wheatstone standards. So now you can actually dial into a Wheatstone system through the blade through the gateway as if we were a Wheatstone blade. So we just pull right up in their navigator system, and now you can route the audio as you see fit. And with our Wheatstone add-on card, for those Wheatstone users out there, in case you're curious, we've given you logic commands too. So you can actually have 64 logic inputs and 64 logic outputs that are sent to and from the Wheatstone system that allows you to take control of the Wheatstone system remotely, or have the Wheatstone system pass those relays off to the other remote studio to control that studio remotely through logic as well.
We've been talking Tieline and the product line called Gateway with Jacob Daniluk from Tieline. And by the way, you may have other questions. Not a problem. You see that phone number right up there, 800-426-8434. Call us at BSW. We will help you there. And when needed, we're going to get Jacob or somebody else from Tieline on the line with us so they can explain it more from a technical standpoint and fit the Gateway version that you need and go from there. And by the way, availability is not a problem either. So that's what you do. You contact your favorite BSW sales rep, and let's go with Gateway, whether it's the 4, the 8, or the 16, and it's available from BSW and BSWUSA.com. Jacob, thanks for the visit. We appreciate you joining us, and we thank you, the audience, for joining us here today on this edition of BSW Tech Dive.